Hello and welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring today's most pressing global issues into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. Amid the escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, U.S. mediator Amos Hochstein has suggested that the gap between the parties is narrowing, signaling progress in efforts to secure a ceasefire. However, despite ongoing negotiations, Israeli airstrikes continue in eastern Lebanon Thursday, killing at least 47 people and injuring 22. The strikes targeted Hezbollah-controlled southern suburbs, marking some of the heaviest bombardments yet, with clouds of debris rising from multiple hits. For more on the latest developments and forecasts for a ceasefire, we're joined by Robert Lawrence, assistant professor at Dongduk Women's University. Welcome, Professor.
Hi, thanks for having me on tonight.
Thank you. And also joining us is Seung-Hoon Baek, researcher at the Institute of Middle East Studies. Great to have you, Dr. Baek.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me to Within the Frame.
Thank you, too. Now let's start first with Professor Lawrence. So, like I've said, the U.S. Middle East envoy mentioned that he had significantly narrowed the gap in ceasefire talks between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah. What are the key points, and how likely do you think that a deal would be reached?
Well, the details of the deal are still a little bit unclear, but sources close to the negotiations are saying that the Lebanese government and Hezbollah have agreed to a deal centered on UN Security Council Resolution 1701. This is the resolution that ended the 2006 Hezbollah-Israel war. But both sides have claimed that the other has violated the deal in the past. So it's very difficult to see what part of that former deal the negotiators are going to try to implement in any new ceasefire. I think the two crucial sticking points will likely be the location of Hezbollah forces, as well as Israel's ability to enforce the deal. So Israel will not want Hezbollah forces anywhere south of the Litani River. And they're also going to want the ability to strike any Hezbollah forces that disregard this part of the deal and move south. Now, the Lebanese government, who's negotiating on behalf and with the support of Hezbollah, has said that it won't sign a deal that's going to breach their sovereignty in such a way. So the likelihood of the deal is actually going through will be determined by each side's ability to bridge the gap between these two positions.
Right, and we'll have to see in the coming hours or so. Now, Dr. Baek, amid this ongoing stalemate in ceasefire talks over Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has offered a $5 million reward for the release of hostages held by Hamas. What is the intention, do you think, behind this offer?
Offering a $5 million reward for release of hostage appears to serve several strategic purposes for Israel. So one is incentivizing insider defections. So the reward targets individuals within Hamas or its affiliates who might have actionable intelligence on hostage location or conditions. This could encourage defections or leaks from within the organization, exploiting the potential fractures or dissent among Hamas members. And second one is the expanding intelligence channels. By offering a substantial monetary incentives, Israel may hope to broaden the scope of its intelligence gathering effort. Informant could range from local Gaza residents to intermediaries or individuals with indirect ties to Hamas, creating multiple avenues for actionable information. And third is undermining the Hamas cohesion. So a financial reward can build distrust within Hamas by making members suspect one another of cooperating with Israel authorities. This could disrupt internal operation and decision-making within the group, even in incel group decision-making process. And reassuring them, the fourth one is reassuring domestic and international audiences. The offer of this kind of $5 million offer demonstrates to Israel's citizen and the international community that the Israel government is actively pursuing all avenues to secure the release of their hostage. This can bolster public support and serve as a public relation move to underscore Israel's commitment to the human security of its citizens. And fifth one is psychological pressure on Hamas. The announcement of such reward places public and psychological pressures on Hamas as it amplifies global scrutiny on their handling of hostage. It highlights Hamas' moral and legal culpability in holding non-combatants as leverage. And six, the last is alternative to military action. While military operations remain ongoing, this move signals an alternative approach aims at saving lives without escalating violence, especially amidst stalled, ceasefire negotiation. It may also act as a parallel effort to complement military and diplomatic strategy. So in all, by combining financial leverage with diplomatic and military measures, Israel seeks to maximize its option for resolving the hostage crisis while maintaining the strategic pressure on Hamas.
Right, so a move that has a lot of strategic intentions behind. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu also recently revealed that Israel has struck some of Iran's nuclear facilities during airstrikes last month, despite U.S. calls for restraint. Professor Lawrence, why did Israel move forward with this action, and why did they disclose this information now?
Well, Israel kind of found some clever middle ground here. What they hit, Israel hit the Telegon 2 building in the Parchin military complex about 30 kilometers southeast of Tehran. So according to U.S. and Israeli officials, this complex was part of the Ahmad nuclear program, previously believed to have been halted around 2003. They allege that the complex was used to design and test sophisticated explosives that are necessary to detonate a nuclear device. So fast forward a bit, earlier on this year, both Israel and U.S. intelligence services discovered activity around the complex indicating that it was active again. Now, this was not a declared part of Iran's nuclear program. So if they had treated this attack as an attack on a nuclear facility, it would have been an admission of covert nuclear activity and probably a violation of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. As to why they make the announcement now, I'd say there are probably two clear reasons. First, they wanted to apply pressure to the recent IAEA Iranian negotiations going on by arguing that Iran has not been forthcoming and honest about its nuclear ambitions. The second reason is that Netanyahu would like to distract the public with a significant victory against Iran's nuclear program. He and his chief of staff have been under intense scrutiny in the last couple of weeks over their handling of October 7th and the ensuing hostage crisis. So it serves two purposes for them.
Indeed. So it's an intriguing move given the timing and Netanyahu's ongoing security concerns. Now, meanwhile, pro-Israel figures have been nominated for key positions in the incoming Trump administration. Dr. Beck, how would this affect U.S. policy toward the Israel-Palestine conflict?
The nomination of pro-Israeli figures to key position in coming Trump administration is likely to significantly impact U.S. policy towards the Israel-Palestinian conflict. But we still have to wait and see how far the Trump administration will shift its policy further in favor of Israel. So Senator Marco Rubio, currently nominated as the next Secretary of State, and Representative Mike Waltz, appointed as a National Security Advisor, are regarded as figures who will lead President Trump's hardline Iranian policy that might be beneficial to Israel in his second term. And Elise Spurtanic, who is appointed as a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, is also considered a person who will publicly promote President-elect Trump's pro-Israel agenda, because he stood out past years by interrogating 3 Ivy League university presidents, the principals, regarding the rise of anti-Semitism on campuses, and causing 2 of them to step down. So even the Israeli mission to United Nations also expressed reservation about Spurpanik's nomination as a next ambassador. So arguably, the U.S. policy-wise, there are several points we could prospect. So one is strengthen U.S. support for Israel. The U.S. might deepen its military and economic assistance to Israel, reinforcing the bilateral relationship and ensuring Israel's qualitative military edge in the region, which the previous administration also have done past decade. And it will continue on with Trump administration because utilizing Israel as a regional hegemon is the cheapest way to keep order in the Middle East. And the second point is policy shift on settlements. So the administration may take a more lenient stance on Israel settlements in Palestinians. So Israel's settlement expansion in West Bank potentially signaling a shift away from the long-standing U.S. view that settlements are an obstacle for peace process. So there might be a new legal reinterpretation that redefining the settlement as legitimate under international law, alienating the Palestinians and complicating the peace effort. So, and the third is possibility of weakening the two-state solution. With pro-Israel voices and influential roles, the administration might prioritize the two-state solution as base for the resolving the conflict, like what they did through the Abraham Accord. So this could embolden Israel policy that further entrench control over the West Bank. So, in all, the appointment of pro-Israel figure is poised to create a U.S. policy that is more favorable to Israel, likely prioritizing Israel's security and strategic interests over Palestinian aspirations. So we still have to wait and see, but two-state solution and the establishment of Palestinian statehood will be remote from that we expect, that we dream. But yeah.
Right. So the shift in key personnel could signal a stronger, more unwavering U.S. stance in favor of Israel. Now, the Trump administration's goal, Now, Iran is reportedly in talks with the IAEA to limit its stockpile of enriched uranium and has reportedly agreed to freeze its stockpile. Could this signal an attempt to de-escalate tensions with the West ahead of the incoming Trump administration, Professor Lawrence?
I'm not sure that I'd interpret the talks that way, to be honest. I think Iran was trying to prevent the IAEA Board of Governors from approving a resolution censoring Iran for failing to cooperate with the agency. This would be the second time in this year that this has happened, and it did go through this morning. The Iranian last-minute offer to cap uranium enrichment at 60%, which is just below the 90% necessary for weaponization, was seen as too little, too late for those who approved the resolution this morning. So, according to the IAEA Director Rafael Grossi, Iran has continued to deny access to facilities it wants to see, and it won't give explanations as to why there have been traces of enriched uranium found in places where they're not supposed to be found. So I do think under the Pezeshkian administration, this new administration in Iran, they're looking to relieve sanctions, right? They want the economy to flourish and not be so held back right now. But I don't think that this was the strategic move to do it. I don't think that they were trying to turn heads in Washington or turn heads with anybody in the incoming administration, because this wasn't sufficient to do so. This wouldn't actually make a difference, I don't think, in anybody's mind in Washington.
Right. Then the Trump administration's goal is reportedly to push Iran into bankruptcy, yet there are concerns that the strategy of imposing economic sanctions like his previous term may no longer work now this time around. What do you think about this, Dr. Beck?
If Trump administration is to implement the similar strategy that has employed during his first term, so-called maximum pressure, the policy that might cause the bankruptcy of Iran if they don't comply with U.S. demands, I mean, it will be a difficult task for Trump administration to do so because of the 3 points. The first one is diminish effectiveness of sanction. I mean, Iran has had years to adjust to U.S. sanction, developing strategies to mitigate their impact. These include expanding trade with non-Western allies like China, Russia, and regional neighbors, and increasing reliances on shadow economy for oil export and financial transaction. And global compliance with U.S. sanctions started to erode as country grows, wary of secondary sanction and pursue alternative financial systems such as SWIFT alternatives. So they don't use this SWIFT quote and use other channel like Bitcoin, uses of yuan and ruble in commercial trade. And so moreover, there is a possibility of U.S. allies in Europe may push back against unilateral sanction, especially if they conflict with their own economic interests. And second one is evolving global economic dynamics. While sanctions have aimed to cut off Iran oil revenues, global energy market have shifted. Major buyers like China, India might continue purchasing Iranian oil through barter arrangement or clandestine channels, reducing the impact of sanction and rise of multilateralism. The U.S. unilateral sanction policy may face resistance from emerging multipolar alliances, such as organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation or Shanghai Cooperation Organization, could provide Iran a platform to forge a partnership that bypass a U.S. restriction. And the last one is political risk for U.S. Reliance on sanction could diminish U.S. ability to engage in diplomacy. It could initiate a rift within key allies such as European countries, and they might oppose the U.S. strategy, particularly if it disrupts their economic interest or total dismantlement of the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action platform, JCPOA platform. And the result could weaken U.S. influence in multilateral settings. So because of these three facets, it is very difficult for the Trump administration to calibrate a very delicate sanction program against Iran. So it is very, very difficult for them to push Iran to the bankruptcy. So I don't think it won't be a best solution for making compliant of Iran.
Right, because much of the situation has changed compared to before. Now, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, former Defense Minister Gallant, and Hamas officials on charges of war crimes. Professor Lawrence, what is the effectiveness and the significance of these arrest warrants, and will the issuance of these warrants accelerate Israel's isolation from the international community?
Well, as far as isolating Israel in the geopolitical arena, within some states that have mixed views on the matter, parties opposed to Israel's actions will probably use this as evidence to cement their position. So should they come to power or stay in power, then they'll use this to halt any cooperation with Israel. Additionally, of course, it's going to make travel to any of the 124 states that are party to the Rome Statute very risky for Gallant or Bibi Netanyahu, which might make it more difficult to conduct foreign policy. As far as effectiveness goes, it really depends on whether or not these states plan on enforcing the warrants, which doesn't always happen with the ICC. They don't actually have a policing mechanism to do this. They have to rely on party states to use their own police force to do so. Arresting a democratically elected leader of a country that is not party to the Rome Statute would be very controversial, and it wouldn't be accepted by the U.S. or Israel. So when the announcement came out, U.S. Congress people and President Biden already harshly criticized the warrants, and I think they'll probably have additional repercussions in January. President Trump notoriously has little to no regard for the ICC. I think in his 2018 speech at the UN, he said that it had no jurisdiction, legitimacy, or authority. And he actually considers adhering to the rulings of the ICC as relinquishing sovereignty. So there'll be no cooperation from the United States on any of this. And I think they'll have any country is going to have a tough time actually enforcing an arrest warrant on Netanyahu as long as he's still the elected leader.
So the chances are quite slim. Now, moving on, right? Do you have something to add on?
Well, I mean, it can happen. The Netherlands and Italy already said that they would do it. It could happen, but I think there'll be repercussions, and it is a very risky political move, I think, by any state to arrest a democratically elected leader.
All right. Thank you, Professor. So let's also touch upon the situation in Ukraine before we conclude our discussion. U.S. President Biden recently approved the use of long-range missiles and anti-personnel mines for Ukraine despite previous opposition. Professor Lawrence, why do you think he's making such significant policy shifts so close to his departure from office?
Right. So it's important to note that the administration kind of semi-greenlit this request, right? So the weapons are supposed to only be used in the Kursk region, which isn't what the Ukrainians have been lobbying for in recent months. Ukrainian forces took parts of the Kursk region earlier this year, and it's been the focus of a very significant counteroffensive by Russian forces recently, who have now been joined by 10 to 12,000 Korean troops, North Korean troops, pardon me. So as to the timing of the shift, I believe it's a reaction to changes on the ground and the results of the U.S. election. So the changes on the ground are what I just talked about with the counteroffensive. But Donald Trump has repeatedly said that he wanted to negotiate a deal to end the war as soon as he steps into office. So if the Ukrainian troops can use long-range missiles and mines to prevent Russian and North Korean troops from advancing through Kursk, then the region can be used as leverage, and the Ukrainians will have a better hand to play in the negotiations.
Mm-hmm. Now, in response to these latest decision by the U.S., Russia immediately launched its new hypersonic missile for a counterattack. Dr. Beck, do you think this would lead to greater participation from the West, or what kind of impact do you think this would have on the conflict?
The use of U.S.-made ATACMS and British-made Storm Shadow missile by Ukraine to strike Russian territory, and like what you said, followed Russian retaliation with its hypersonic or Orisnik missile is surely a mark of a significant escalation. But we have to wait and see whether this ballistic missile exchange will continue on and spiral into a further escalation, including extension of war with engagement of third party. But apparently, I see it hugely unlikely. I mean, definitely the provision of long-range missiles like ATACMS and Storm Shadow by US and UK signifies a deepening commitment to Ukraine military capabilities. And these weapons allows Ukraine to target critical Russian military infrastructures far behind the front lines and potentially shifting the battlefield dynamics. And enhanced Ukraine ability to strike Russian strategic targets could degrade Russia logistic, command center, and supply lines. This may temporarily weaken Russian offensive or compel them to divert resources to defend deeper into their territory. But as we have seen Russia counter use of Orisnik, it also displayed its ability to retaliate with advanced weaponry potentially targeting the critical Ukraine infrastructure. So both sides appear to be testing the limits of their technological and strategical capability, raising the stake. But still, we are not sure how far the new Trump administration and the Western allies could bear this escalation. Will they continue on support the Ukraine, which is already 3 years long-lasted war, is in question. So, because if the escalation continues, there's a heightened risk of miscalculation. Particularly, the conflict could spill over into neighboring region if Russia interpret Western support for Ukraine as a direct involvement, promoting countermeasure like cyber attacks or hybrid warfare tactic against NATO state. So Western government may face increased expenditures deploying additional forces to confront with Russia. And the escalation could test the cohesion of Western alliances. While some country may advocate for strong support, others might express its reluctance on its support. So indeed, the conflict is entering a more dangerous phase with advanced weapons shaping the battlefield and escalating the stake for all the parties involved. But as the incentives of escalation is not yet clear, we need to see how this exchange of missiles will progress.
Right, so the next few months would be crucial in determining the direction of the war. Now, gentlemen, we'll have to wrap up our discussion. We're running out of time. Thank you so much, Professor Lawrence and Dr. Beck, for sharing your expertise tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.